15. The Visitor. It was known in the morning that Sarah Crewe was in horrible disgrace, that Ermengarde was under punishment. The servants also knew that Becky was allowed to stay because Miss Minchin could not easily find another creature helpless enough to work like a slave for so few shillings a week. Miss Minchin had expected to see Sarah broken down. Sarah had always been an annoying puzzle to her, because severity never made her cry or look frightened. When she was scolded, she stood still and listened politely with a grave face. When she was punished, she performed her extra tasks or went without her meals, making no complaint. Miss Minchin saw her for the first time when she entered the schoolroom to hear the little French class's lessons, and she came in with a springing step, color in her cheeks, and a smile. It was the most astonishing thing Miss Minchin had ever known. It gave her quite a shock. What was the child made of? What could such a thing mean? She called her at once to her desk. "You do not look as if you realize that you are punished," she said. "I beg your pardon, Miss Minchin," said Sarah. "I know that I am punished." "Be good enough not to forget it and look as if you had come into a fortune. And remember, you are to have no food today." "Yes, Miss Minchin," Sarah answered, but as she turned away, her heart leaped with the memory of what yesterday had been. If the magic had not saved me just in time, she thought, how horrible it would have been. All through the day the light was in Sarah's face and the color in her cheek. The servants looked at her and whispered to each other, and Miss Amelia was puzzled. She thought that Sarah was probably determined to brave the matter out. Sarah realized that the wonders which had happened must be kept a secret. Ermengarde could be told the story and trusted to keep it secret. But whatever happens, Sarah kept saying to herself all day, somewhere in the world there is a kind person who is my friend. My friend. Sarah's supper of the night before had given her strength. She knew that she should sleep well and warmly, and, even though she had naturally begun to be hungry again before evening, she felt that she could bear it until breakfast time on the following day. It was quite late when she was at last allowed to go upstairs. She pushed the door open and went in. The magic had been there again. It actually had, and it had done even more than before. A number of new things had been brought into the attic. Upon the low table supper stood, with cups and plates for Becky as well as herself. Some materials of rich colors had been fastened against the wall. There were several large cushions big enough to use as seats. A wooden box was covered with a rug, and some cushions lay on it, so that it looked like a sofa. Sarah slowly moved away from the door and simply sat down and looked again. Is this my attic? Am I the same cold, ragged, damp Sarah? The one thing I always wanted was to see a fairy story come true. I am living in a fairy story, said Sarah. From that time, life became more wonderful day by day. The fairy story continued. Almost every day something new was done, until in a short time the attic was a beautiful little room, full of all sorts of odd and nice things. When Sarah went downstairs in the morning, the remains of the supper were on the table, and when she returned to the attic in the evening, the magician had removed them and left another nice little meal. Miss Minchin was as harsh and insulting as ever, and the servants were as vulgar and rude. Sarah was sent on errands in all weathers, and she was scarcely allowed to speak to Ermengarde and Lottie. But what did it all matter while she was living in this wonderful, mysterious story? It was more romantic than anything she had ever invented to save herself from despair. The comfort and happiness were making her stronger. In a very short time, she began to look less thin. Color came into her cheeks, and her eyes did not seem so much too big for her face. Very naturally, even Becky was beginning to look plumper and less frightened. She had her share in the secret fairy story, too. She had 2 mattresses, 2 pillows, plenty of bed covering, and every night a hot supper, and a seat on the cushions by the fire. The Bastille had disappeared. The prisoners no longer existed. Then, another thing happened. A man came to the door and left several parcels. All were addressed in large letters, "To the little girl in the right-hand attic." Sarah herself was sent to open the door and took them in. She laid the 2 largest parcels on the hall table, and was looking at the address when Miss Minchin came down the stairs and saw her. "Take the things to the young lady to whom they belong," she said severely. "They belong to me," answered Sarah quietly. "To you?" exclaimed Miss Minchin. "What do you mean?" "I don't know where they came from," said Sarah, "but they are addressed to me. I sleep in the right-hand attic. Becky has the other one." Miss Minchin came to her side and looked at the parcels with an excited expression. "What is in them?" she demanded. "I don't know," replied Sarah. "Open them," she ordered. Sarah did as she was told. When the packages were opened, they saw pretty and comfortable things: shoes, stockings, and gloves, and a warm and beautiful coat. There were even a nice hat and an umbrella. They were all good and expensive things. Miss Minchin was worried. What if this neglected child had some powerful, though eccentric friend, perhaps some previously unknown relation, who chose to help her in this mysterious and fantastic way? It would not be very pleasant if he learned all the truth about the thin, shabby clothes, the scant food, and the hard work. "Well," she said, in a voice such as she had never used since the little girl lost her father, "someone is very kind to you. You may as well go and put these things on and look respectable. After that you may come downstairs and learn your lessons in the schoolroom. You need not go out on any more errands today." When the schoolroom door opened and Sarah walked in, the entire seminary was shocked. "Look at the Princess Sarah!" cried Jessie. It was the Princess Sarah indeed, at least since the days when she had been a princess. Sarah had never looked as she did now. "Perhaps someone has left her a fortune," Jessie whispered. "Perhaps the diamond mines have suddenly appeared again," said Lavinia. That night when she went to her room after she and Becky had eaten their supper, she sat and looked at the fire seriously for a long time. "I am thinking about my friend," Sarah explained. "If he wants to keep himself a secret, it would be rude to try and find out who he is. But I do so want him to know how happy he has made me." "Oh," she exclaimed, "why did I not think of that before?" "I can write to him," she said, "and leave it on the table." So she wrote a note, thanking her unknown friend for being kind to her and Becky. The next morning she left this note on the little table, and in the evening it had been taken away with the other things, so she knew the magician had received it. She was reading one of her new books to Becky when her attention was attracted by a sound at the window. She climbed on a chair and opened the window. It had been snowing all day, and on the snow, quite near her, she saw a tiny, shivering figure. "It is the monkey!" she cried out. Becky ran to her side. "Are you going to let him in, miss?" she said. "Yes," Sarah answered. "It's too cold for monkeys to be out." She put a hand out, speaking in a friendly voice as she spoke to the sparrows and to Melchizedek. "Come along, monkey darling," she said. "I won't hurt you." He knew she would not hurt him. He let her take him and looked up into her face. "Nice monkey, nice monkey." She kissed his funny head. "Oh, I do love little animal things." "What shall you do with him?" Becky asked. "I shall let him sleep with me tonight, and then take him back to the Indian gentleman tomorrow." And when she went to bed, He slept at her feet, much pleased with his place.